if you want to, a kind of an ontology that has costed the society billions and billions of any decent currency, which is the ontology, the idea, the belief that it are the genes in the body that cause diseases. For years we have thought that the genes, right, you understand, the genes in the body causes a disease. If you have the wrong genes, that would cause that you get cancer, right? That was a common belief until recently. Therefore, we have invested lots and lots of money in gene therapy, right? Therapies that would have an impact on the genes in order to avoid that a disease breaks out. Now we know today that it are not the genes that cause the disease, but the proteins. The genes are just there as a potential structure. And a protein does or does not get that potentiality into reality. Gene therapy was an assumption. Nobody ever was able to prove that genes were indeed responsible for diseases. That is what an ontology does. An ontology is an assumption, an acceptance up front of a world. If that ontology is wrong, your entire view of the world is wrong. That is very important, okay? If your ontology would be wrong, if you really indeed would continue to believe that genes are responsible for diseases, then all medical treatments that you invent will not work. Since the basic assumption is wrong. This is very much the case in management. The basic assumption, the ontology of management, is one of a rational market and a rational client that has all information and that exchanges that information on a rational basis. That's an ontology. That means that all the theory, all the epistemology that you develop on that ontology is based on nothing. What I really would like you to be aware of in your entire life is, what is your ontology? What do you believe? Do you think that the world is measurable? If you think that the world is measurable, the world will appear to you to be measurable. Flatland is an ontology. Accepting that the world is two-dimensional is an acceptance. Once you have accepted the two dimensions, you can't see squares anymore. You can't see rectangles anymore. They exist, but you can't see them. And why can't you see them? Since you limited your view due to your ontology. If you believe that you can anticipate the future, you're going to build technical analysis like traders use a lot in trading rooms, that you think that give you an idea of what the share values are going to do, and it doesn't give you any idea. It's just a theoretical application. And as long as the market is stable, it's fine, since it goes on continuously, but you don't need a system if the market is stable. If the market is stable, you know what is happening. You only need a system if the market is not stable. And if the market is not stable, your system that is based on a stable market doesn't work. As I say, and I repeat that, financial markets are probably the most complex markets that we know in management. Yeah? So that is, of course, the interesting thing to talk about. The essence of science is not to find the absolute truth. The essence of science is to explain you the things within a contemporary framework. That means that you can only do the science that the contemporary framework, which is the actual framework, allows you to do. Okay? Galileo could only do what he did since the things were available that he needed. Before going into the research part of the thesis, you'll have to define your ontology and your epistemology. What do you believe the world looks like? If you believe the world looks like measurable, then you will use certain tools which, if you would believe that the world is constructed, you would not work with. Is it clear that these are two different things? An ontology is an assumption, is a framework that you accept from the beginning, within which then you're going to develop. So financial theory is an epistemology that is developed within a certain ontology of a rational world. Marketing is an epistemology that is developed within a certain ontology, being an ontology of a measurable world. If now you would choose another ontology, and that is what this course is about, I'm going to introduce to you another ontology. then you will see that marketing will be different in that ontology. That financial management, read the books of Mandelbrot, will be different in that ontology. There's a whole second approach which is based on architecture, arts, and the usefulness as a criteria, which we like to call postmodern theory. Interesting about a guy like Feyerabend, he wrote many very interesting books, but what he always argues is that all innovations, all scientific innovations, be it in physics, in astrology, whatever, they will always go against the prevailing ontologies. So basically, we are going to do a lot about what we call constructivism, radical constructivism, but call it constructivism, which is basically based on a neurobiological concept of the world. A market is a biological colony where buyers and sellers interact. That's what I mean with a biological concept. Essential in philosophy of science, what essentially happened is that before the Cartesian period, before the Galilean period, science was very much intertwined with religion, and basically science was there to justify religion, and religion was there to justify science. Now you can say that is sad, that is bad, that's fine. There was one good part on that. At least it was in fact a very holistic view of reality. When we came to the Cartesian and the Newtonian period, the main thing that we lost was that holistic view. If we lost anything in the Cartesian Newtonian period, it was that holistic view, right? And we got another paradigm, right? And despite the fact that we had the relativity theory, that we had quantum mechanics, and that we had complexity theory, still most of our thinking is Newtonian. What is the box of Pandora? The box of Pandora is self-reference. It's a very strong concept which I really would like you to understand. Gödel, as I said, is a mathematician, and in 1931 he wrote the most famous theorem in mathematics, which is the Gödel theorem. The Gödel theorem is interesting for what it showed, and I'll explain to you in a minute what it showed, but it's even more interesting in the way how he proved his theorem. It said what he said there: all consistent axiomatic formulations of the number theory contains propositions on which one cannot decide. Let me explain that. Number theory is a theory that talks in numbers. So what Gödel says is you will never be able to find an axiomatic system that is capable of either accepting or rejecting all statements. In other words, mathematics is not the ultimate science. The box of Pandora that Gödel opened was proving, as a mathematician, he was proving that mathematics was not the ultimate science. The interesting thing, however, is the way how he proved his axiom. And the way how he's proved his axiom is self-reference. Self-reference is referring to yourself. When I talk in language about language, that is self-reference. Recall in your high school that you had to make analysis of sentences, right? A subject, a verb, etc. You recall? You did that using language. That is highly self-referential. You talk about language using language. He did the same with number theory. And how does it work? It works like follows. Any sign that you have, you give it a number. So this sign